When I was this week preparing for this message, as I was thinking about Scout and her amazing courage as a young woman, I was thinking about, just throughout history and throughout Bible history about people that have had to go against the odds, to stay on a true north for their life. And I was thinking about Esther and the story of Esther, a young woman who had to overcome incredible odds, difficult odds, impossible odds to stay on true north for her life. And in the story of Esther, it's a young woman who is living in the king's palace. And her uncle Mordecai becomes aware of an evil plot by evil men to annihilate the Jewish people that were living in that nation. And so he goes to Esther and he says, Esther, you live in the king's palace. You could find your way, you could get there to him, and you could alert him that there's this plot going on. Well, she knows protocol, and she knows what is legal, not legal, right, and not right with the king. And she's like, Mordecai, there's nothing I can do about it. It's not my place. I don't have the authority. I don't have the place to do this. And besides that, they could kill me if I do this, if I try to approach the king without him summoning me. And so then we read, what is Mordecai's response? Does he say, oh, well, I didn't know that, or I didn't realize that, so of course you can't go before the king. Esther chapter 4, verse 14. If you keep silent at a time like this, deliverance for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. And who can say but that you have been elevated to the palace for just such a time as this? It's easy to see in the story of Esther, up until this verse, you can see that she has no intentions of changing her course. I'm on a course. And when you read the scripture, and I would encourage you to do this, read all the scripture, it gives you the thought, it clearly comes ringing through that she's in the palace, she's okay. You could say she's insulated from this threat. And Mordecai's like, if you think just because you're in the palace, if you think that somehow this isn't going to affect you, you're wrong. And Esther, she could play all kinds of different cards. There's all kinds of reasons why she doesn't have to be the one. Number one, she could say, I'm a girl. Pastor, what are you, some kind of sexist? What do you, the girl card, I can't believe you said that. Well, in that society, in that day, I know equal rights and all that, but in that day, it was not the place of a young lady. It was the oldest male in the family, according to tradition, according to society of that time. It was his place. It wasn't the place of a young lady to have to lead the family. It was Mordecai's responsibility. So she could have said, I'm not going to change my course because it's your responsibility. And you know what? I can't believe you asked me to do it. She could play the teenager card. Well, I'm a young girl. You're the older male. I'm a teenager. It's not my time yet. She could play the refugee card. She was in exile in not a country of her own, driven from her country because of wars and conquest. So she could say, I'm a refugee. What possible responsibility do I have? She could play the orphan card. She could, well, I'm an orphan. Her parents were killed in these conquests, in these wars, and she was living with her uncle Mordecai, she had been with her uncle Mordecai, so she could say, I'm an orphan, and who would ever ask me, after all that I've been through, to be responsible to save these people? She could play the minority card. I'm a minority. My race in this, and of all the minorities, Scout even said it, in the city, people don't even understand it. They don't even really realize, or it's been around people. I'm a minority, and I'm looked down upon, and I'm not the one. She could have played the sexual abuse card. She was sexually abused. Well, Pastor, why do you say that? Well, she was living in the king's palace along with many other women, as not of her own desires, but for the king's pleasure. All these are legitimate. We're not talking about sometimes in life when people give you excuses, kind of like the humidity excuse. You're like, that's an excuse. I recognize it right off. When you hear Esther's story, you go, ooh, yeah, man, that's right. You hear that, you hear that, you hear that. I mean, this woman has a full hand of options why she doesn't have to be the person. And you can see that if she doesn't change her course, she's going to do nothing about this injustice that's about to happen. So let's look at verse 15, and let's see how she responds back to Mordecai and Mordecai's challenge. Then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai. Go and gather together all the Jews and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go to see the king. And if I must die, I am willing to die. What an amazing statement from this young lady. And what do we know? We know that she saved an entire people group because of her courage to go before that king. Against all odds, she saved these people and stayed true to her true north.